So we're gonna start off with doing some advanced pulse diagnosis. And this is stuff that I learned post acupuncture school from various different teachers. And the approach is pretty much the same with all of them. And of course, I've developed, from there, my own approach to the pulse. One of the things, particularly in my Japanese training, that we learned was to use the pulse as, literally use it as the pulse in your treatment. So that you're in your treatment, you take the initial pulse, you do, say, your most important points, and then you return to the pulse and see if there's a change. So you're figuring out during the treatment whether what you're doing is working or not by whether or not it's changing the pulse. So this was transformational, really, in my acupuncture practice, because I didn't have to sit there and go, oh, are these the right points? Nothing's changing. Just something different. Okay, now the chi is moving. Now, because what you're going to find, and this is something that I learned actually from Wang Ji in the applied channel theory, was that initial pulse that you feel when you touch the body is basically the impact that their environment is having on them. So it's kind of a superficial, in the moment pulse, but it's not necessarily the true pulse. So he talked about, I don't know if Jonathan taught this or not, about channel chaos.
No.
Did he talk about, see, that was like the key takeaway for me when I studied with him. Is he had this theory called channel chaos. And basically it's from electromagnetic forces, electricity, Wi-Fi signals, so it has an impact on our vibration, and our chi either stops or starts running in opposite direction, it gets erratic. And this is something as well, like when I went through acupuncture school, everything was do the 4 gates plus 20 other needles. And for me, right from the get-go, I was always like, that is too much. And I didn't really use the 4 gates that much because I just found that it completely overwhelmed the system. So Dr. Wong talks about you do the initial pulse, and if you're feeling more than 3 things right off the bat in the pulse, do the 4 gates. Leave it 20 minutes, and then come back, check the pulse, and that's your pulse. That's your pulse rating, because that regulates, we know the 4 gates, that's what it does, it regulates the chi in the channels. So you do the 4 gates, you come back, and you're like, okay, now you do your assessment. So we can actually do that since we're all acupuncturists. Why? We can try that. But first of all, go through this practice as the first step, and then the second step will be that. So basically, the idea is, and we should already be fairly regulated because we just did a nice Qigong class, but the idea is to, before you even start, is to not only regulate yourself, but also kind of regulate yourself with the client, right? And just take a few slow, steady breaths, settle in, and when we're in school, it's all like, pulse, and this, that, and you're all in your head, and you're really not centered. And neither is the client, especially a new client, especially a client who's never had acupuncture before, right? They're going to have white coat syndrome and all of that. So to create that space, do your breaths yourself, create your chi field, activate, right? And then even take 2 or 3 breaths, sinking with the client. So, I have my first volunteer. Yep. Head here. Yep, on your back. actually a lot of the time when I'm treating as well, I'll actually treat the abdomen and then I'll check the pulse, and that has a very similar kind of regulating purpose. So we'll do that after, and then tomorrow we'll start that way with the pulse more. So as I lay my fingers on the pulse, I'm not trying to identify what's happening under all three fingers. I'm just feeling the pulse and what's my impression. What is just the overall sense of it. And really just trying to not be in my head. And almost like I'm feeling her pulse in my heart space. That makes sense. Are you on any medication? Obviously that's should be have our intake forms done, but we don't. So at this point, normally what I would be doing is I would be writing down my initial findings before I go any farther. So in this hand, the pulse was very short and almost like the slippery feeling that it was like a ball. And it was mostly in like high. So it makes me wonder, do you get respiratory issues? Or did you
do more now than I used to.
So that is like, because it's almost like there's phlegm up high. So that was my feeling and the sense of the pulse, but also because I know when I can see that she's very active and I would expect a pretty good cardiovascular rate, it's a little rapid. So to me that tells me there's like energy up here trapped above. So it was kind of like almost an anxious, but
Yeah.
but
Like I always feel like when you were doing that hand, I could feel my heart.
right.
Where
Yeah.
when you went to this hand, I couldn't feel that.
Yeah, and on this side it was a what I would consider like a light pulse, and it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel
And that's how I felt when you were doing your hand.
nice. That's why treating practitioners is so amazing, because the self-awareness is there. So on this side, like the initial impression was just like it was kind of soft, and if anything, a little bit on the thinner side. But again, I'm just looking for like a sensation. And like when I started doing pulse this way, because I got overwhelmed. It's like I was getting rushed with like all the feelings and all the words and all the levels and all the depths all at once. And I'm like, I don't know. And when I started teaching it in the college, like every client either had a slippery or wiry pulse according to the way they're taught. I'm like, that is not wiry. You know, and then the one time that we feel a wiry pulse, I'm like, guys, come here. This is a wiry pulse. Right? So it's rare, really. Wiry is a very strong, like, liver pulse, right? So someone who, like, parties a lot and maybe does drugs or drinks and eats a lot of red meat and is a very strong constitution, you're going to see a wiry pulse. Or someone who's really actually very efficient, but has, like, a depth. You know, it's like more of a deficient wiry pulse, but it comes across as that, also that really congested. Usually it's women usually with like real emotional constraints, so it's either the physical or the emotional side. Anyways, all that to be said. So, and I mean, I've done trade shows where I've done this, and the only question I ask is, are you on any prescription medication? Have you had any surgery? And aside from that, I just feel this, and I'm like, oh, awesome. You know, or like when you just tune into it, right? It's right there. It's right there. So that's it. That's the first level of assessment, is actually unteaching what you've already learned to settle in